Welcome to the Physical Product Movement, a podcast by Fiddle. We share stories of the world's most ambitious and exciting physical product brands to help you capitalize on the monumental change in how, why, and where consumers buy. I'm your host, Ken Ojuka. In this episode, I talked to Heather Saffer, founder of Dollop Gourmet, a gourmet frosting brand sold in stores across the country. We talk about how Heather transitioned from owning a bakery to creating a product that could be sold in retail outlets across the country. She explains how she came up with the idea for her company and how she used PR and primetime TV appearances to find success competing against industry giants. It's a great episode with a lot of gold nuggets of wisdom from a wonderful founder who's been in the trenches. I think you'll find it interesting and insightful in many ways. All right. Hey, Heather, how you doing?
I'm great, Ken. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Where are you calling in from? Where are you based?
I am in Oregon, about 40 minutes west of Portland.
Oh, cool. I love that area. Hey, we've got a lot of content to cover, so I just wanted to just jump in pretty quickly. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about Heather and, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, long story short, I started a bakery years ago. I had never actually baked before, but I got it in my head that it would be a good business to start. And so I decided to teach myself how to bake. And I say that I went to the school of Google and YouTube, and that's pretty much how I learned how to bake. And I went with it because I found out that I was actually good at it. And I was one of those people that I wasn't good at anything. So after failing at so many things and trying different hobbies and different careers and different jobs, to find something that I was naturally good at, like baking, I thought I better run with this because I might never find something I'm good at again. So I started a bakery. I had a lot of success. I won Cupcake Wars on Food Network. Business was really good. And I got a book deal to write a cookbook. And things are really great. And then I decided that I wanted to get out of the bakery business because, quite frankly, I felt trapped. When you have a retail shop, you have to be there all the time. And if you're not there, people get mad that you're not there. So I had my employees and they didn't want me to be there. But my customers wanted me to be there. And I would field all these emails saying, "Where are you, Heather? I brought my daughter. I drove an hour and a half. She saw you on TV. And I'm so mad you weren't there when we got there." And I thought to myself, this wasn't really what I had bargained for, sitting in this box waiting for people to come see me. So that's how I decided that I was going to move on from the bakery and create a product line. I thought, how hard could this be?
Famous last words, right?
Right? Yeah. I thought, I'm going to create a vegan natural frosting because one doesn't exist. And I make frosting all day for the cupcakes. I just put it in jars, right? How hard could this be? And I discovered that it was much harder than I initially anticipated.
Okay, so was that the beginning of the Dollop Gourmet? Is that when it officially started out of the bakery?
That was when it officially started. That was when the product line officially started. There was a gap between closing the bakery and launching the product line into retail stores because of my mentality. How hard could it be? I thought I'll just close one and start the other and we'll be off to the races. And it didn't actually happen that way. It was a lot more difficult than I thought, and it was really hard to find a co-packer. And that was kind of a really giant holdup that took, almost a year and a half to
Okay.
find a co-packer.
Okay. So how long did you run the bakery?
I ran the bakery for about 3 years.
Okay. And where was this?
This was in upstate New York. This was Rochester, New York.
Okay. And you must have been pretty young. How old were you when you started that bakery?
I was about 25, 26.
Oh, okay. 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 So you run this for a couple years. You decide you don't like being stuck in a box. I really like that description, actually. And I know a lot of people who feel that way. Um, and so you come up with some recipes, I assume. How did you develop the product? Tell us a little bit about that process.
It was a long process, a lot longer than I thought it would be, which is kind of the theme here. Everything's longer than you think it'll be.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, I make frosting every day, all day. I'll just take this frosting and put it in a jar. And it didn't work out that way. I actually did that, and within a few weeks I went to San Francisco and exhibited at the Fancy Food Show,
Uh-huh.
because this was January at this time, and I got a lot of really great feedback and a lot of great interest from retailers. But one of the problems was that I didn't have any shelf life testing. So, and I was actually using butter at that time. I hadn't had the idea to make it vegan yet. I was using butter at that time, and I was like, this is going to have to be refrigerated. This isn't going to work. There's not going to be any shelf life. This isn't how it's going to sit on the shelf. It's just not going to work. And so I went back to the drawing board and I said, you know what, I think I want to make it vegan. I'm not going to use butter. And then I started playing around with different formulations and trying to convert my frosting that I was using at the bakery that everyone loved into a vegan shelf-stable frosting that could sit on the shelf for up to a year and still be good.
Okay, understood. And so your idea was you were gonna sell this through retail, and it needed to have a better shelf life. Were there any other considerations about the product? You mentioned vegan, and I noticed that you also promote it as and I love this actually, better for you, dessert company that produces vegan and gluten-free, lower sugar frostings. And so that's kind of a mouthful. So you kind of told us how you came about, sort of with the vegan positioning. What about like gluten-free and then lower sugar parts of that?
Yeah, so around this time, I learned that I had celiac disease, and so I
Mhm.
hadn't known up till then. I was always sick when I was a kid. I was always going home with stomach aches, and my cupcakes, that I was making had wheat in them. They were regular cupcakes, but at this point, right, I'm 26, 27, 28, and I just assumed, I thought that everyone felt sick after they ate. I'm 28 years old. I think that this is a normal thing by now. Like, I have always felt sick after I ate. I think
Mm.
that everyone feels sick after they ate. I'd see people eating giant lunches and I'd think, how could they possibly eat a lunch like that and then go about their day? Like, don't they feel horrible? Because I
Mm.
thought everyone felt sick after they ate. And after I closed the bakery and after I wrote my first cookbook, I started hearing more and more about gluten and celiac disease. And that's when I discovered that that's actually what I had. And so that's why gluten-free became important to me in creating the frosting. And lower sugar. My frostings at the bakery were always lower sugar. I
Mhm.
always thought that frosting in general was too sweet. The frosting that people think of when people think that they don't like frosting, it's because it tastes just like sugar paste
Right.
instead of a flavorful frosting. And so my frostings were always lower sugar just because I think that that's how they taste better. I think they should be more flavorful and it shouldn't just taste like a spoonful of straight sugar. So that's how that became important. And wrapping it all into one package, it just became this better for you, vegan, gluten free, lower sugar frosting that was a lot different than what existed, such as Pillsbury, Duncan Hines, Betty Crocker, like the traditional
Right.
preservative filled frostings.
Understood. Yeah. So you were having some shelf life issues. Did you actually do like the research yourself to figure that out? And were you doing these mixes? Like, was this at home, or did you have a partner at this time, like a manufacturing partner?
I did not. I still didn't have a manufacturing partner. That took, like I said, like a year and a half to find
Hmm.
someone who would do it. So I was coming up with these on my own, and I did use Cornell for shelf life testing.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. So you've got some pretty powerful positioning. Did you run with that, in terms of, vegan, gluten free? Did you run with that in your marketing and as you were promoting this, or did you try some other positioning before you came to that?
No, I immediately ran with that. I mean, it's kind of funny though, like when I would do sampling at retail stores, I played around with the messaging to see what would get people's attention the
Hmm.
most to call them over to my table and get them to sample it. So while using that same messaging, I would play around with what I put the importance on, whether I'd lead with try some lower sugar frosting or try vegan frosting. Like I play around with it to see what what got more people's attention.
Okay, got it. And what about flavors? How did you think about that? Did you just have one flavor at the time, or did you launch with a few different ones?
I launched with a few different ones. So you have to have chocolate and vanilla, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I had chocolate and vanilla, and then I had a flavor that I called Firebomb, which was a flavor that I won cupcake wars with,
Uh-huh.
and that was pretty popular at my bakery. And then I did another flavor called peanut butter cookie dough, which again was a flavor I won cupcake wars with, and which was
Mm-hmm.
popular at the bakery. So that's what I started with. That's not what is available now. There's still chocolate and vanilla, but I learned over time that although the firebomb was incredible and there was a group of people that absolutely loved it, it was a more unusual flavor that was more of an acquired taste because it was a spicy sweet frosting. And
Sounds
so
delicious, actually.
it was good. It was like Fireball, the whiskey in a frosting.
That's awesome.
It's really, really good. Um, and it pairs really well with strawberries and red velvet, but it's not it's not an everyday frosting. So I learned quickly that I was probably going to have to retire that one because it just wasn't getting the amount of sales, right? It's one of those flavors that it has its loyal fans, but there's just not enough of them.
Right, right. So as you're thinking about this business and you're thinking about your frosting, who is your target market? Like who are you thinking about that's on the other side of that purchase?
The target market was people that like to bake at home. And I always tried to also tailor it to, I, I don't, I mean, honestly, these days I don't really bake at all, but I still love frosting. So even when I had the bakery, I'd be more inclined to dip pretzels in the frosting
Hmm.
and like banana chips in the frosting than actually eat a cupcake. So I tried to tailor it to people that loved dessert, loved frosting, and wanted um, something delicious but better for you without all of the junk in it that they could eat as a snack or dessert. So that category of people, and then people who bake at home, pretty much.
Okay, and so you've got your product, and you're getting some sales. Um, how much of the business was consumer, direct to consumer versus wholesale? And did you set up the website right away?
No, I didn't set up the e-commerce website um, until I got on Shark Tank, really.
Hmm.
So I was doing solely wholesale. The first customer that we had was Wegmans. So immediately got into all Wegmans locations. So that was where we were doing most of the selling before Shark Tank.
Wow, how did you get into Wegmans?
I called someone who knew someone who knew someone, and I got myself a meeting with the buyer, and I went and I sat down with her and I brought my samples of frosting. This was before we even did any production runs, because I had decided that I was not willing to dump the money into a production run without having that product sold first.
Got it.
So I sat down with her and I said, I told my story. I sold it to her and said, look, if you're interested, which you should be, um, you can be the first and we will do this production run if you tell me how many cases you'd like to order. And that's pretty much how it went down. I wasn't willing to just store product in a warehouse and then try to sell it. I wanted to have the sale before I did the production.
Okay, and for those who aren't familiar, how big is Wegmans, and where are they primarily located? Do you know?
Wegmans it's constantly one of the top supermarkets in the country because they have excellent stores and excellent customer service. It's mainly in the Northeast. They do grow every year, so they're traveling a bit more down south, but it's only on the East Coast, New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Massachusetts, North Carolina now, I think. And they have about a little over 100 locations.
And so they immediately put you in all their locations. They didn't just test you out in one store or anything like that.
No, it's shocking, isn't it? it, it is shocking. They immediately put me into all of the locations. Yes.
Oh, that's pretty incredible. That must have been some sales pitch.
I am a pretty good salesperson. I think it was an excellent sales pitch. It's also, I mean, a lot of it sometimes just comes down to the buyer. If you're able to connect with the buyer, they're the gatekeeper, and so um, they hold your future in their hands, really. So you
Yeah,
have to
no,
connect with that buyer.
that's true. That's true. You have to get to them first, and it sounds like that wasn't a direct connection. You had to go through several people, but then once you're in front of them, yes, you have to definitely connect to them and sell your product. So, um, the question that's actually in my mind is how much of your success with Cupcake Wars and some of the media attention that you'd already gotten, how much of that do you think um, made a difference in your ability to get into Wegmans?
A lot. I think
Okay.
I think I've always thought of my journey as a ladder, um and kind of knowing what I wanted, what was going to be at the top of the ladder, and then taking each step to get there, leveraging each step off of the step before it. So Cupcake was, first of all, opening a bakery, because, having a presence, and then winning Cupcake Wars. I knew, I went into that like knowing I need to win. There are no other options. I'm going to win. And that's just it. I'm going to win. And knowing that I needed that to get to the next step. I want a book deal. Well, I need to win Cupcake Wars to get a book deal. And then using that, okay, I've got a book deal. I want to create this product line. I need to get into a major store. And just using all of those pieces to build on top of each other and kind of just snowball itself into getting more and more attention and traction. So I think I think that if I was just, had this idea for a product and I hadn't had any media exposure, any attention, or any success behind me, I think it would have been really difficult. I don't think they would have put me into all of Wegmans stores, or even any, maybe.
Okay, understood. And in fact, Heather, that's one of the things that I was excited to talk to you about. It's pretty clear to me that you've got a knack for promoting your products using PR and media, and getting on primetime television. So we've talked a little bit about Cupcake Wars. I want to go into a little bit more detail there, but you also got on Shark Tank. You were on QVC. You've had some book deals. So why don't we just hear, just a quick story about how you were able to do each of those. It sounds like Cupcake Wars was first, right? Was that your first sort of big media exposure?
Yeah, that was the first national media exposure.
Okay. So how were you even able to get on that? And how do you think it benefited your business?
So I auditioned pretty much right after I opened my bakery. I filmed an audition video, and I got an email a couple months later saying, the production company saying that they were going to pass and they weren't going to have me on the show. So I had to wait another year, and I decided I was going to try again. So I filmed another audition video, making it better than the one the year prior. And I got a call from the production company saying that they were going to have me be on the show. So that was a big deal. I mean, it was frankly, it was just auditioning, and, I didn't make it the first time. And then learning from that and asking the producer the next year, like, well, what are you looking for? And watching other audition videos and seeing who they've invited to be on the show and piecing it all together to film a better audition video that I think would get me on the show. So it was just a lot of like research and learning, and that's what got me on the show. Now, I believe that when I was on the show, out of the people that I competed against, I believe that I was the only one there with the attitude that I am going to win. And I don't think that I think winning was a big deal. Like, just getting on a show is good, but I don't know that I would have had the same level of success at the bakery or getting the book deal or any of that if I hadn't won.
I see. So have you kind of always been competitive like that?
I don't think so. I mean, like I said before, I was never really good at anything. So it's hard to be competitive when you're not really good at anything, right? You don't even stand a chance to compete if you're not good at anything. So I don't think a lot of it stemmed from I found something that I was good at, and I was afraid that I would never find something I was good at again.
I
And
see.
so I put all my eggs into this basket, and I wasn't going to let the basket go no matter what.
I understand. So it sounds like you got a little bit of feedback. You figured out how to make your video better. Are there any tips that you can maybe share with us about, you know, maybe some of the things that you did to actually make the video better? What did you change?
So I actually found someone who is the videographer, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And I put together a plan instead of just kind of winging it and talking to the camera. And I put together, I mean, it was a silly video. It was me in a wedding dress. I borrowed a wedding dress from a friend, and my brother made me a giant cupcake costume mascot for my business, and I married my business. I married the mascot costume. So it was pretty funny. But as far as tips, I mean, it depends on the show, right? Every show is looking for something different. So you really have to just do the research on the show. And there were other audition videos out there that I could see on YouTube from people who've auditioned for the show.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the production company sent me examples, and in a couple of the examples, the contestants were swearing in their audition video, and these were people they picked. So I thought, okay, I'm going to swear in my audition video. They seem to like that. When my customers saw it, they tore me apart. They hated it. How could she swear in her video? And this is who you want to buy cupcakes from. And I thought, well, I did it strategically.
Right.
But it really it depends on the show, right? Every show is looking for something different. So you have to know what the show is looking for.
Okay, I think that's a pretty good segue into Shark Tank. I found actually a blog post that you wrote back then, and I just wanted to read it real quick. It says that you said, I'm extremely excited. It took a lot of work, patience, and belief in myself to get here. There were so many times that I didn't think I'd ever see this day come, even though deep down inside, I truly did believe that I would. I know that not everyone understands how hard it is to get on a super popular show on primetime television. So let me show you the numbers. This season, 40,000 people applied to be on Shark Tank. Out of those 40,000 people, 180 of them pitched and filmed in front of the sharks. Out of those 180 who filmed, 116 of them get on air. So 40,000 to 116. And so, yeah, I think that's a little bit of an understatement that it's hard to make that cut. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about that experience and how you were able to pull it off?
Yeah, thank you for reading that and reminding me. It's always nice to have it's a reminder of your own words, things you might forget, right? It's always funny when someone asks me, so I'm thinking of going on Shark Tank. Can you talk to me? Give me any tips? And I always say no. No, I can't talk to you and give you any tips. Just try to apply. Like if you can get on, if you can get on, then maybe I'll talk to you and give you some tips. But I don't know what you're thinking about. Like it's not easy to get on. There's nothing to think about. You just apply and see if they actually want you. So it was a very long process. I think I applied a couple of different times and I never heard anything back. And then I applied and I got a response back and they asked me to make a video. And so I made a video, and it was just a lot of back and forth, making a few other videos and talking to them, doing interviews, making more videos, doing more interviews. And it was a different process from Cupcake Wars, because the process with Shark Tank was you never know the whole process if you're going to actually get on the show.
Huh.
So even, there was one point where they usually film in June and September, I think. And I was supposed to film in June, and I was waiting for a call. They were going to fly me out within the next week. And I was waiting to hear from them. And I remember I was driving in my car, and the producer called me, and I thought she was calling to tell me when my flight would be. And she actually called and she said, Heather, so I'm sorry, but at the last minute, we've decided not to move forward with you. I know we were going to fly you out next week, but we're not going to fly you out. But stay in touch, and maybe we'll, try again for September. And I was just crushed.
Oh,
I
sure.
had been through this long process. I was just crushed. I thought I was going out to LA the following week. So to hear that I wasn't was just shocking to me.
Yeah.
So that was the difference with Shark Tank, is and even when even when I got able to be on the show, they called me for September and flew me out. They fly out more people than they are going to film. So, and then they film more people than they're going to air.
So you still don't know. Even if you make it to LA, you still don't know.
Right. There was a guy that was there filming the same time I was, and they film for 3 days, and they film a certain number of people per day until they run out of time. And they have a list of the order of people they're filming in. And I was just annoying. Like, if I want something, I can be annoying. And I just had this feeling that I was at the bottom of the list. And so I kept asking the producer, where am I on the list? Where am I on the list? She's like, oh, don't worry about it. You're fine. Don't worry about it. And I was like, well, just where am I on the list? And she's like, don't worry about it. Just keep preparing. Go to your green room. Just relax. And then I went into hair and makeup, and I looked over on the dressing table, and I saw that my hairstylist had the list. And I peek over at it, and I'm looking for my name, and I'm like, oh crap, I think I see my name on the bottom of the list. I asked the hairstylist, I say, is that the list? She says, oh yeah. And I said, am I at the bottom? She said, oh, I'm not supposed to tell you. I'm like, I know, but I'm like freaking out here. Can you just tell me, am I at the bottom? She's like, I'm not supposed to tell you. I'm like, I know, but I'm having so much anxiety. Like, I just need to know. And she's like, yes, you're at the bottom. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm the last one on the list. So I call my producer over, and I'm like, you got to do something. Like, I know I'm at the bottom of the list. And she's like, how do you know? I'm like, I know, I just know. And she's like, well, how do you know? And I'm like, well, I just don't worry about it. I just know. I found out. I saw the list. I'm like, you have to move me up. And I just badgered her for like the next couple hours. And then eventually it was the end of the third day. It was just before 7:00 at night. And my producer comes in, and she's like, okay, you're up, and calls me to go.
That's awesome.
So I go to film, like I film like the whole thing. I go on the carpet, I pitch the whole thing, very exciting. And I find out later that the guy that was in my spot, because I was in his spot, they sent him home. They ran out of time. I was the last person to pitch.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's amazing that like even you're sitting out there for 3 days, you think you're gonna pitch and you go home. And it's also just a lesson that you really have to advocate for yourself.
Right.
On these shows and in general. I mean, similar thing happened on Cupcake Wars, and a similar thing happened on a game show I was on about a year ago. You really have to advocate for yourself if you want it.
I think that's a great lesson. So the show, obviously it went pretty well. You were able to get a deal with Barbara. What effect did Shark Tank have on your business?
It was, I mean, it was big. It was definitely, especially for e-commerce, which I had just launched like a week prior to Shark Tank airing. Got a ton of orders, really flooded with orders. And then it led to a Forbes article that I was profiled in that made it on the main page of Yahoo. And I got just as many orders from that as I got from Shark Tank. So I was again flooded with orders. So it was really big for media exposure. Again, it was another rung on that ladder that I could use to leverage other goals that I wanted. So it was, I have zero regrets. It really is big for business. I mean, it's not, but I will say it's not a miracle cure. Like Shark Tank is not going to make you wealthy. It's made some people wealthy, but generally most people, it's not going to make you wealthy. You still have to run your business. You still have to grow your business. You still have to hustle. You still have to do all of the business things. It's just a little boost.
I see. Yeah, it's not going to suddenly turn a bad business into a good business.
No.
But it will give you a boost and get you some sales, get you some exposure. And were you able to leverage that? Is that how QVC came about through Barbara?
It didn't come about through Barbara. It didn't come about through anyone on Shark Tank. I got accepted into an accelerator program after that. And Shark Tank just kind of came, or not Shark Tank, QVC came about just through networking. I was just kind of reaching out to people. And I had met with a QVC broker, and through her, I was able to pitch to QVC and get accepted.
Okay. And what kind of impact did QVC have on your business?
QVC, it was good for sales. It was good for exposure. It was good storytelling. I did not go back on again, so I wouldn't say that it was huge for actually growing business. And I think that's just because of the product that I have. So I wouldn't, anyone listening, I wouldn't take that as gospel. I do know people that they get a lot of their business they do is through QVC. It really is dependent on your product. And if you have a product that fits well with the QVC demographic, I know people that they're on QVC every month, and most of their business is through QVC. So it's just dependent on your product.
And so, was it at about this time that you decided to write a couple books and you got your book deals, or when did that happen?
I got my first book deal after Cupcake Wars, and then my second book deal I got. Yes, it was after Shark Tank. It was before QVC.
Okay. And they just reached out to you, or how did that happen?
No, my
I'm
friend,
sensing
no one has ever just reached out to me.
I'm sensing a pattern here.
No one has ever just reached out to me. No, I had a literary agent from writing my first book, and through my literary agent, which again had not just reached out to me, through him, I decided I wanted another book deal. And so I kind of worked with him to come up with some different book ideas. But I wrote 3 or 4 book proposals for different ideas that he pitched to publishers before he was able to sell my second book deal. So So there was a lot of behind the scenes work involved in that as well.
Yeah, yeah, I'd imagine. All right, well, I know that we're getting close on time. I did want to hear a little bit about the sale of your company, how that happened, and and how that experience was for you.
Yeah. So did someone reach out to me? No, I decided that I had enough. That I had been growing this brand for almost 10 years, and I was ready to let it go and move on to do something else, and that I wanted to sell the business. So I reached out to a couple people that I knew, and I was actually talking with a couple people, one guy in particular, for almost a year who was going to buy the business. And we went through our attorneys and wrote up the contract, and we're negotiating, and it came to signing on the dotted line. And that very day he was supposed to sign on the dotted line, he instead emailed me and said that he was backing out.
Wow.
So it was right. It was a year down the drain. And it was pretty crushing. I had to take a moment to compose myself and get back on the train of looking for a buyer. And I actually put it out there publicly, like, I'm looking to sell. And a company that was in Canada reached out to me and said they had been following my story for several years, and they were interested. And so it didn't take quite a year. It took about 6 months, though, to finally negotiate and all the terms and sign the contract. And then it was sold.
Very nice. So you often hear that people feel a sense of loss or sadness after a sale. Did you experience any of that, or were you pretty happy to sell your company?
I didn't feel a loss or sadness. I did feel a bit of an identity crisis, though,
Hmm.
because when you're building a business for that long, and you become your business, and everyone perceives you as this business, and so to not have that business anymore was a bit of a, who am I? What do I do? Um, so it was unexpected. Like, I feel like no one told me that that's how I would feel afterwards.
Right, right. Okay, well, let's just jump into the quick fire round. I've just got four quick questions for you. Number one, name one tool or resource that you rely on to run your business.
I guess Shopify.
And what is one book that has helped you the most in your product journey?
In my product journey?
Yeah, yeah. In this whole journey, are there any books that helped you out?
Oh gosh. Um, I read mostly fiction.
Oh yeah, what's a
Yeah.
favorite of yours?
A book I read recently is called The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and it's about the war, and the Holocaust. That has nothing to do with business.
Well, that's great. Let's go on to the next one. What is one piece of advice that you would give your 21-year-old self?
My 21-year-old self, I would say, um, don't don't worry so much, and keep doing what you're doing because you're having fun, and eventually you have to grow up.
That's great advice. And who is one person in the world that you would love to take to lunch?
Oh, my grandma. She
That's
passed a
awesome.
few years ago, and I just really miss her, and I'd love to take her to lunch.
Oh, I love that answer. All right. So as we wrap up here, I'd just like to ask you if there's any advice that you'd give to people who are kind of grinding it out right now in the world of, creating a physical product and getting it out to people. What's a piece of advice that you could offer them?
My advice would be that you have to really believe in what you're doing and craft your stories, get really good at storytelling, and advocate for yourself. You have to be your number one fan, and you just have to not let any no's bother you. Or if they do bother you, get over it really fast.
Yep. Get to the next no. Keep out there. Yeah, I love that advice. Is there anything that you want to plug or promote?
I do some consulting, coaching for dessert entrepreneurs, and that information can be found at heathersaffer.com. And I also have a passion project, nonprofit, to raise money for animal rescues, that I create artwork and put it on t-shirts and mugs. And I just want to raise money for animal rescues. So if you like some original artwork and raising money for animals, that can be found at heatheranddonald.com.
Okay, awesome. And it's been an awesome interview. I think there's some just amazing gold nuggets in this interview. I just want to thank you for taking the time today and sharing your story. And I wish you the best of luck and everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken. You've been great. I appreciate it.
The Physical Product Movement podcast is brought to you by Fiddle. To find out more about Fiddle and how our industry-leading inventory ops platform is giving modern brands and manufacturers full visibility into their inventory and operations, visit fiddle.io. And then make sure to search for Physical Product Movement in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Fiddle, thanks for listening.